And I'm going to talk about the proliferation of women's sports and that much debated and discussed term, the Caitlin Clark effect.
One word to describe Caitlin Clark.
Amazing. A beast. She is the truth.
There's nothing wrong with the resentment that you may feel towards what she represents.
Caitlin Clark effect is real.
An athlete commanding an entire league from the sidelines. She is eclipsing NBA legends, compelling billionaire CEOs to stake their personal fortunes, and resurrecting a dying global brand. All of it unfolds while she sits injured, watching from the bench instead of competing on the court. How is that even possible? Half a decade ago, this narrative would have been dismissed as fantasy. Today, it is documented reality. And what is building toward 2026 transcends statistics or media coverage. This is a seismic cultural revolution, the type that fundamentally alters basketball, women's athletics, and our understanding of how much influence a single competitor can wield.
What was the most important sports story to you?
Okay, ladies first, right? So I'm going to talk about the ladies, and I'm going to talk about the proliferation of women's sports and that much debated and discussed term, the Caitlin Clark effect, which is really an umbrella term for everything that happened in sports because it was so much more far-reaching. People are actually making a financial investment because it's smart, the numbers are there, it makes money.
The Caitlin Clark phenomenon is not manufactured buzz. It is relentless force. Can anyone contain it? That question is dominating the entire sports landscape. This surge is not fading. It is accelerating. Caitlin Clark is dictating the narrative. PSA just released their 2025 data, and the industry is still processing the implications. If you are not immersed in the collectibles world, PSA is the authority that authenticates trading cards and essentially establishes the standards for the entire market. When PSA releases numbers, collectors listen.
Your autographed Superfractor rookie card sold for $78,000. So how does it feel to have a piece of cardboard out there with your signature on it worth so much money?
I think it's cool. I mean, I grew up collecting cards with my older brother. I just wanted what my older brother had, and I would just take what he had. Like, if he got something good, I'd be pissed, and I'd, go tell my mom about it.
I love it.
Their annual rankings provide an unfiltered view of who genuinely drives sports culture, and the 2025 data revealed one undeniable truth. Caitlin Clark is now the most collected active basketball player globally. Let that sink in completely. She did not gradually climb into elite territory. She did not settle somewhere near the summit. She obliterated the competition. She surpassed LeBron James, the undisputed face of basketball for 2 consecutive decades. This is a competitor with 4 championships, 4 MVP trophies, and the all-time scoring crown. Clark defeated every active NBA player in existence. The stunning part is the circumstances. She accomplished this while sidelined with injury, unable to compete in a single significant game, yet simultaneously dominating the market and shaping the culture.
She could be $1 billion athlete. Like, when I see these numbers, I'm like, oh, this is Tiger in the Tour. This isn't even Jordan. This is totally...
This is not chance or a temporary surge. This represents a fundamental transformation in how sports attention flows and who commands the spotlight. And the supremacy extends even further. PSA published comprehensive geographic data, a nationwide breakdown revealing which current athletes receive the most card submissions for grading. When you filter for basketball, the competition ends immediately. It is purely Clark territory. Region after region, from one coast to another, collectors submit more Caitlin Clark cards than any other player. The visualization is striking. It resembles those overwhelming electoral maps where one candidate dominates nearly every territory. The statistics leave zero ambiguity. The map communicates everything without requiring promotional spin. Clark also secured 3 positions among the 10 most graded cards overall in 2025. Not limited to basketball, but spanning every sport, football, baseball, hockey, the entire landscape. She stands alongside Patrick Mahomes, Shohei Ohtani, Connor McDavid, and still emerges victorious. That fact alone is remarkable. But the chronology makes it even more extraordinary. In 2024, Caitlin Clark placed 6th among the most collected basketball athletes. Strong, recognized, but not dominating completely. 12 months later in 2025, She rocketed straight to the top position while absent for most of the season, recovering from injury. Let that sink in completely. To surge from 6th to 1st while unable to even compete requires a gravitational pull most athletes never achieve. Ryan Hyatt, the president of PSA, addressed it directly. He stated, "This kind of momentum is only witnessed with the most elite competitors." He clarified that this transcends basketball alone. It reflects cultural influence that extends far beyond the arena. When an athlete can control the collectibles market while observing games from the sidelines, they have entered a rarefied territory very few in history ever occupy. You attain a position where the sport no longer constrains you. You transform into a cultural icon whose worth is independent of active participation. Your reputation alone generates attention. Your presence alone generates revenue. That is precisely why some of the most influential people on the planet are making enormous wagers on what Caitlin Clark will accomplish in 2026. We are discussing millions of dollars from private wealth, all surrounding one major corporation, Nike. Consumers want to purchase Caitlin Clark merchandise, and they particularly want to purchase Caitlin Clark Nike merchandise. Why is Nike still wading so deep into her WNBA journey when you could have released something last year and it would have vanished from shelves? It makes little sense. To grasp why this is significant, you need to see how challenging things have been for Nike approaching May of 2025. The stock had fallen nearly 60% since 2021. That is not a correction. That is a freefall. This is among the most iconic brands globally. A company that defined sports culture for decades was hemorrhaging value rapidly. Analysts were publicly questioning whether Nike had forfeited its competitive advantage. The brand that formerly dictated market direction was suddenly fighting to maintain relevance. Younger companies that hardly existed a decade ago were capturing Nike's territory. Brands like On Running, Hoka, and other agile competitors were making Nike appear sluggish and obsolete. The swoosh, formerly a symbol of supremacy, began to resemble a relic from a previous generation. Investors grew anxious. Staff members felt uncertain. The complete sports apparel sector was monitoring whether the giant could genuinely recover. Then emerged the Caitlin Clark signature shoe scenario, which became a perfect illustration of how misaligned Nike's strategic thinking had grown. Supporters were disappointed. The appetite for her shoe in 2025 was unmistakable. The marketplace was vocal about it. Nike possessed a perfect opportunity to capitalize on the most marketable competitor in women's athletics, and they allowed it to pass. Instead, Aya Wilson, the WNBA's most commanding statistical presence, obtained a signature shoe first. That decision communicated volumes, and it only intensified the spotlight on what Nike overlooked with Clark. Now, Aya absolutely warrants recognition. She is an exceptional athlete and a multiple championship winner with credentials that stand alone. But from a pure commercial perspective, people were raising the obvious concern. Why was Caitlin Clark, the largest attraction in women's athletics, still in limbo? The player filling arenas, elevating broadcast numbers, and generating constant attention, was not the one receiving the shoe everyone desired to own. Regardless of the explanation, whether it was manufacturing complications, a flawed strategic calculation, or Nike advancing too slowly through bureaucratic obstacles, the result remained identical. Supporters perceived it as another Nike blunder. Another instance where the company appeared detached from what the marketplace was explicitly requesting. For many observers, it strengthened the perception that Nike no longer understood the pulse. That sentiment only reinforced the conviction that Nike's peak years might be finished. The brand that formerly moved decisively was now responding belatedly. Trust was eroding and the criticism surrounding Nike kept intensifying. But this is where the narrative pivots in a meaningful direction. Something has been unfolding discreetly behind closed doors and it deserves attention. On December 22, 2025, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, executed a transaction that captured attention throughout the business community. He acquired 50,000 shares of Nike stock. Consider that context. Tim Cook does not require speculative ventures. His fortune exists on a scale most people cannot comprehend. He could remain comfortably with conservative investments and never question returns again. When someone at that level with premium access to intelligence, consultants, and market analysis commits millions of personal capital into a struggling brand, it demonstrates conviction. That kind of action suggests privileged information, extensive analysis, and faith in something not yet revealed. And Cook was not alone in making a declaration. Elliott Hill, Nike's CEO, also participated, acquiring approximately $1 million worth of Nike stock near the conclusion of 2025.
People want to buy Caitlin Clark things, and they especially want to buy Caitlin Clark Nike things. Why is Nike continuing to wait so long into her WNBA career when you could have put something out last year and it would have sold out? It doesn't make much sense.
Records confirmed that CEO Elliott Hill purchased roughly 16,000 shares of Nike. Someone rapidly calculate the total. Consider what that genuinely communicates. A CEO investing in his own corporation with personal funds is not a trivial action. That is not something you execute on intuition or optimism. If you are leading a company and you anticipate it is about to collapse, you are not purchasing stock. You are disposing quietly and securing yourself before circumstances deteriorate. But Elliott Hill did precisely the reverse. He bought shares. He committed actual capital on the outcome. That is a public demonstration of confidence that cannot be reinterpreted or misconstrued. And now the metrics are beginning to support him in a substantial manner. On a recent earnings discussion, Hill disclosed that Nike's North American operations increased 9%, approaching roughly $63 billion in the most recent fiscal quarter. That is genuine expansion. After years of regression, after endless discussion about Nike surrendering relevance, the recovery is finally materializing. The information indicates the trajectory is transforming and people are questioning why. So what triggered the reversal? What ignited this resurgence? What revived the giant? Numerous observers are indicating one explanation. Caitlin Clark's signature shoe, Nike's concealed strategic advantage. Then on December 31st, Caitlin appeared on the New Heights podcast with Travis and Jason Kelce, two of the most prominent voices in sports broadcasting currently. The discussion addressed everything. Her collegiate career, her injury rehabilitation, her mental approach going forward. But embedded inside that conversation was one segment that resonated differently, something that should have sneaker enthusiasts, investors, and basketball observers all paying attention. The hosts questioned her explicitly about her involvement in designing her shoe. They wanted to understand how engaged she was, how particular she became about the engineering, the sensation, and what actually contributed to her signature product. That inquiry opened the pathway to something much larger. Her response altered the entire atmosphere of the discussion. She acknowledged she is incredibly particular about what she wears during competition. She discussed appreciating certain Kobe designs, shoes constructed for sensation, equilibrium, and performance that satisfy her requirements. Then she revealed a statement that immediately captured the sneaker community's attention. She declared whatever entered her signature shoe needed to equal that level of engineering or surpass it. And then she advanced it another step. She stated it is going to be even superior. New technology. Engineering that has never been implemented before, technology developed exclusively for her shoe. She did not provide specifications, but she clarified one element. People are going to be enthusiastic. Let that truly register. Nike has been producing basketball shoes for generations. This is the identical company that collaborated with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and every significant name in the game. And now they are creating brand new engineering specifically for Caitlin Clark. This is not a basic rebranding or a palette modification on an existing design. This is not a superficial partnership. This is Nike's innovation division executing work.
And I mean, she's the truth, and she was a rookie, right?
Yeah.
Knock down the three-pointer, get to the rim. She can get to the free throw line. She's crafty.
Yeah, very crafty.
Crafty. So sometimes she look like she's coming off for a three-point shot, and she backdoors.
That capture everything about her performance. She does not require proximity to the basket. She does not require ideal positioning. She can elevate from anywhere on the court at any instant under any degree of defense. That is her distinctive ability. And Nike is constructing an entire marketing offensive around it. This is no longer a tentative introduction or an experimental release. Nike is not measuring responses or proceeding cautiously. They are completely invested. The shoe is arriving in 2026. The precise date remains undisclosed, but the commitment is confirmed. What carries more significance is who is supporting it. Two of the most astute CEOs globally, men who have constructed and safeguarded multi-trillion-dollar enterprises, are risking their personal capital on this initiative. That is not fortune or exaggeration. That is strategic calculation. Tim Cook and Elliott Hill are not spontaneous decision-makers. They are evidence-driven executives with access to market intelligence most people will never encounter. When both of them execute the identical investment simultaneously on the identical athlete, it signals certainty on a different plane. They are wagering substantially on Caitlin Clark and Nike in 2026. And that alone communicates everything. Caitlin Clark has already become mandatory viewing. Now, imagine what occurs when she actually returns to the court. That is when everything transforms. And I mean, she's authentic. And she was a first-year player, correct? Yeah. Drilling the three-pointer, penetrating to the basket. She can reach the free throw line. She's clever. Yeah. Extremely clever. Clever. So occasionally she's appearing like she's preparing for a three-point attempt and she backdoors you for a layup. She involves her teammates. She can distribute. She can score. Man, she is a comprehensive basketball competitor. That is when Gainbridge Fieldhouse becomes explosive and every remaining explanation attempting to describe WNBA momentum without acknowledging her begins crumbling. We already received a glimpse of this in May of 2025, and it established the framework for what is approaching next. After 6 months away, Caitlin dressed for a preseason exhibition against the Brazilian national squad. Not a postseason game, not a regular season contest, simply a warm-up scrimmage, the variety of event that typically attracts a few hundred supporters on a favorable day. Instead, Carver Hawkeye Arena reached capacity in minutes. The appetite was so intense that ESPN, a network that deliberately selects what merits national broadcast, determined to air it. Remember, this was a preseason exhibition against an obscure international squad. Still, 1.3 million people watched. Place that alongside the 2025 WNBA Finals, which averaged approximately 1.5 million viewers. A meaningless preseason game featuring Caitlin Clark nearly equaled the viewership of the league's championship competition. And here's the element that makes it even more remarkable. Those finals figures were calculated using Nielsen's revised rating methodology, which accounts for far more devices and streaming services than.
How monumental is the Caitlin Clark effect? Clark will make her regular season WNBA debut on Tuesday when the Indiana Fever take on the Connecticut Sun, and as expected, the game is already sold out. The Sun's first sold-out home opener since 2003. Ticket prices have skyrocketed. Courtside seats for this game are reselling for over $2,000 each. As for the rest of the league, the Las Vegas Aces and Washington Mystics have already moved to bigger venues to accommodate for the demand when Caitlin Clark comes to town. The Indiana Fever have also become the most followed WNBA team on Instagram.
Previously, even with that benefit, the difference was minimal. That is the degree of attraction she possesses before the actual games even commence. Those viewership figures are already elevated compared to games earlier in the 2025 season, and particularly when you compare them against prior years. So when you evaluate things equivalently, a Caitlin Clark preseason game probably attracted more attention than the WNBA Finals. Let that register for a moment. The most significant games of the year with the league's premier teams competing for a championship could not equal the fascination of watching Caitlin eliminate rust against a squad most Americans had never monitored. That is not criticism of the other competitors. It is simply the truth of what Caitlin represents regarding attention and cultural attraction. She generates a degree of interest that functions outside typical league dynamics. Now, advance to 2026. Caitlin returns to the court in brand new shoes, supported by the complete strength of Nike's marketing apparatus. After a complete off-season of continuous build-up, comprehensive coverage, and every major sports platform monitoring her return, the viewership threshold gets shattered completely. This is where those expanded Nielsen ratings finally benefit women's basketball instead of concealing regression. Her first game of the 2025 season against the Chicago Sky attracted 2.7 million viewers, and that was measured using the previous rating methodology. Now incorporate the new system, the Nike shoe launch and the narrative of a superstar returning from injury becoming a complete cultural phenomenon. Here's the prediction. Remember this figure. Her return game surpasses 5 million viewers. State over or under, but that is the benchmark. 5 million people watching for a regular season WNBA game would position her in the identical category as NBA playoff contests. That is mandatory television equivalent to the most significant moments in basketball. How transformative is the Caitlin Clark effect? Clark will make her regular season WNBA debut on Tuesday when the Indiana Fever face the Connecticut Sun. And as anticipated, the game is already at capacity. The Sun's first sold-out home opener since 2003. Ticket costs have skyrocketed. Courtside positions for this game are reselling for over $2,000 individually. As for the remainder of the league, the Las Vegas Aces and Washington Mystics have already relocated to larger facilities to accommodate the demand when Caitlin Clark visits. The Indiana Fever have also become the most followed WNBA franchise on Instagram. The here is why the forecast maintains validity even under scrutiny. The new Nielsen setup alters everything. Games featuring Caitlin are no longer regional or discretionary. They are national programming. Networks are not abandoning those ratings again. The message is already transparent. When she competes, viewers materialize. Opponents do not matter. Scheduling does not matter. Weeknight, weekend, competing broadcasts, none of it concerns broadcasters anymore. Her participation guarantees attention. That makes her scheduled programming, not speculative content. Supporters who never monitored the WNBA previously suddenly know the tip-off schedule. She attracts casual observers into the identical space as dedicated basketball followers. That convergence is uncommon and it is influential. In 2026, with every element coordinated, that reach finally displays at complete strength. Caitlin Clark is not simply experiencing a moment. She is commanding a transformation. The magnitude of it positions her outside conventional basketball comparisons. This is not exclusively about statistics or victories. It is about visibility, authority, and consistency across mediums. When you align the indicators, the pattern is difficult to dismiss. She dominates the collectibles marketplace while injured. She becomes the most collected basketball identity in the nation without recording minutes. Corporate executives with access to premium intelligence commit personal wealth connected to her impact. A heritage brand restructures its innovation strategy around her product. Broadcasters reorganize coverage because her games exceed projections. That combination does not occur accidentally. It is not marketing manipulation. It is reaction to appetite. The metrics follow her, not the reverse. At that stage, the discussion transforms. She is no longer simply a star competitor within a league. She becomes a bridge between sports, commerce, and mainstream society. That is the plane she is functioning on now. And 2026 is positioned to make that undeniable. Verify the evidence. Preseason games converting into sold-out occasions. Confirmed. Social media feeds saturated every time her name circulates. Confirmed. Caitlin Clark has entered a territory that transcends basketball and exists securely in mainstream popular culture. This is not fabricated excitement or a media fantasy. This is the marketplace responding in present tense. Supporters are expressing with their purchases, their engagement, and their focus. Collectors are pursuing her cards. Networks are compensating premium amounts to broadcast her games. Nike is investing substantial research and development into her signature shoe. High-ranking CEOs are dedicating personal resources based on her influence. Every quantifiable indicator of relevance is directing toward the identical conclusion, and it keeps amplifying. At this stage, Caitlin Clark is not merely an athlete. She is an independent brand. She is a phenomenon. She is concrete evidence that women's sports can attract mainstream fascination at the identical level as men's sports when the correct person emerges at the correct instant. Ability, charisma, timing, it all synchronized. There were people who predicted it would diminish. They asserted once the newness dissipated, once supporters adjusted to witnessing a woman dominate the game in unconventional ways, the excitement would recede. That assessment aged poorly. The attention did not decelerate. It expanded. Others predicted missing time would halt everything. They assumed stepping away from the court would fracture the momentum and redirect supporters toward the subsequent storyline. That did not materialize either. Her absence produced the opposite effect. The momentum kept accelerating while she was gone. The evidence is omnipresent. Trading card appetite climbed. Executive investments intensified. Media obligations expanded. Every concrete figure shows the identical truth. Her influence is independent of box scores or minutes competed. Her reputation alone activates markets. Her return instantly becomes an occasion. Brand alliances deliver actual returns. Broadcast strategies revolve around her calendar. Marketing initiatives orbit her existence. Millions of eyes are already anticipating. Everything is synchronized from the shoes to the screens to the storylines. And it all centers on one force, Caitlin Clark. For some explanation, this young woman is the one that people desire to observe. And if you don't comprehend that, if you don't recognize that, if that's a difficult reality for you to accept, then I don't understand what you're examining.
For some reason, this young lady is the one that people want to watch. And if you don't understand that, if you don't see that, if that's a hard thing for you to swallow, then I don't know what you're looking at.
She is no longer simply participating in the sport. She is transforming the culture surrounding it. She is redefining the business framework. She is demonstrating that women's sports can command the identical platform, the identical attention, and the identical economic influence as any male equivalent. The genuine question now is whether the infrastructure can maintain pace. Can leagues, sponsors, and media completely handle momentum at this magnitude? Because 2026 is not a destination. It is an inaugural chapter. And when Caitlin Clark returns to the court, the world is not simply going to observe. It is going to witness something transform in real time. This is where everything converges. Not speculation, not hopeful projection, reality. The metrics, the capital, the attention, the chronology, all of it directs toward one conclusion. Caitlin Clark did not simply advance through basketball. She penetrated through it. She attained a position where leagues modify, brands reposition, and media responds instead of dictates. What we are observing is not a comeback narrative. It is a power transformation. An athlete whose authority does not suspend when the game concludes. Someone whose absence intensified the appetite louder, not quieter. Caitlin Clark is out for 2 weeks with a strained quad. Because of her absence, ticket transactions are down 71% according to SeatGeek. 71% because one person is not competing. That is exceptional territory. That is cultural gravity. By the time she returns to the floor, the platform will already be constructed. The cameras will already be secured. The expectations will already be enormous, and the impact will extend far beyond a box score or a victory column. This is commerce, culture, and sport converging in real time. The truth is straightforward. This moment did not emerge from nothing. It was accumulating while people debated, questioned, and looked elsewhere. Now, it is impossible to overlook. And if you want to stay ahead of what emerges next, not after it detonates, not after it circulates, but before the rest of the world recognizes, that is where Courtside Leaks enters. No filler, no recycled perspectives, just the genuine signals, the genuine moves, and the genuine stories shaping the game. Because the next chapter is already in progress, and the ones paying attention now are the ones who will comprehend it first. We've got every angle covered, every leak, every backstage development, every moment they won't show you. Hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video. Stay locked in with Courtside Leaks, your home for the truth behind the WNBA headlines.